Hey everyone, I'm Clayfect, and I think it's time we make another Tutootsie. If you want to follow along on this tutorial series, where I make these tiny monsters, then I would highly recommend you watching the base video first. There will be a link down in the description below for you, before you get right back to Sadi and me. But otherwise, let's just get started, guys. So the very first thing I'm going to do is make some teeth for Little Sadi. I pre-baked them for 10 minutes on 130 degrees Celsius, that is 275 in Fahrenheit, I believe. Now while they are in the oven, let's get started on the cheeks. I take a ball of clay and cut it in the middle to get a pretty cohesive size before I place them. Now, as Little Sadi's names indicate, he's going to be sad. So we want to place the cheeks as low as possible. Keeping in mind not making them too big because we are going to put a layer of fur over them afterwards. With his cheeks in place, it is time for his snout. I don't know how I got the idea, but I want Little Sadi to be a mix between a walrus, a clown and a dog. So in order to do that, we're going to press and smooth in a pretty elongated ball of clay that is going to work as the snout space. When that is done, we are going to press the pre-baked teeth in. Before we move on to give him some lips using a sheet of clay like you see me doing here. Now, there are many steps to this base snout that I'm showing you, but they are all just leading to a different mouth. If you were going to smooth this sheet of clay in like you see me doing and just stop there, then you pretty much have a mouth that is perfect for a hippo or some sort of troll. But if you want it to be more dog-like, you need to draw a line on the middle part of the snout before you take two balls of clay on each side of the line and smooth them in using our round rubber shaper tool. Now, speaking of tools, there is an affiliate link down below in the description for you, where you can get all the tools and the clay you're going to need to make one of those little Tutootsies. I will get a small percent of that, guys, but it is only to buy more clay, so if you want to support me and my clay making ways, then please do. Now with that being said, it is time for the nose, where I simply press a ball of clay in between the two other balls before I poke some nostrils, and I poke them to the side to make it more dog walrusy like. So it's pretty much like Lovey's nose, only the nostrils are positioned differently. Now with the snout in place, it is time to make some eyelids. And I do that by tracing a little snake of clay at the top and at the bottom of the eye, keeping them very neutral for now. With the eyelids in place, all we have to do is smooth them in. Before we gently check and press on each side of the eye, like so, making them sort of tilted, and hopefully is helping with Little Sadi's sad expression. Now for the most crucial part, the eyebrows. We are going to take a snake of clay and place them sort of tilted before we smooth them in too. And just like that, Sadi is sad. Now, while he's giving me a devastated stare, let's make some ears. I decided to go for long fluffy ears on this one, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut out a little square. Before we cut that square from corner to corner, making two triangles. Now, we are only doing this to make them pretty cohesive in size. So when we have the triangles, what we have to do is to shape them to our liking before we put them on. Now remember, we want Little Sadi to be sad, so we are going to place the ears sort of low. Again, to emphasize the sorrow that Little Sadi is going through. A tip though, to place long hanging ears instead of just smooshing them to the face and call it a day. Place it like you see me doing here, smoothing down the bottom first, before we bend the ears down and then use our round rubber shaper tool to smooth out the top. Now he has a little bend at the top, and it just really levels up the detail level and makes it look better in my opinion. Now with the base of the face pretty much done, let's get to work on Little Sadi's shoes. And I do that by cutting up a ball of clay before shaping them to my liking. After that I place them on another sheet of clay and cut around them simply to make the soles of the shoes. Now I'm going for a pretty cartoony sneaker, and I'm not going to sculpt half of the shoe simply because it's going to be protruding out under the stomach, so we're not going to see it anyway. So I am going to skip a step of 2 in making this shoe. But if you feel like making a full shoe with all the details, the only advice I actually can give you is to take a shoe and look at it and sculpt after that. With the bottom of the shoe done, I'm taking a thin piece of clay and put it around the end of the shoe before I smooth that in. Simply to make that wobbly tip of the sneaker. When that is done, I'm making some laces by rolling a very thin snake of clay and then placing it on the shoe. I secure that by poking it with the smallest ball stylist I have, and that is pretty much it. I just keep doing that in that zigzaggy pattern shoelaces is known for. Like I said, we're not going to see the top of his shoe, so with the laces done, that is pretty much it. All we have to do is secure them now, and we can move on to the tail, where I take a ball of clay that have shape and press them into his buttocks before smoothing that in. And just like that, he has a little tail. With his shoes done, it is finally time for his texture. We are going for this long scruffy fur, so we are taking a lot of small snakes of clay and press them all over his body for now. Now making this texture is a very tiresome process, but don't lose hope, just keep going and you're going to love the end result. Now with all his snakes doodad thing on, notice how I am placing my fingers now, only at the top of the head and at the bottom. And that is because we're going to bring some life into this fur now, taking our dentist tool and gently scrape every little piece of fur we have just placed. Notice that I keep my hands at the top and at the bottom. I'm also going to scrape the ear, even though I haven't placed any snake doodads on them. I decided to do that simply so the ears wouldn't get lost in the fur. Now with his whole body textured, it is time to work on the top of the head. I do that exactly as I did the rest of the body, though note that I'm only holding on to the arms now. It's a bit of a finger dexterity game. The further you get along with the sculpture, the more difficult it's going to be. You also see me plugging him up on something a little higher now, simply to make it easier for myself. With the top of his head covered in fur, I also give him a little twirly doodad simply to give him a little more pizzazz, you can say. And with that on, it's time for his first bake. I bake him for 25 minutes on 120 degrees. That is 248 in Fahrenheit. When Sadie is baked and had time to cool, it is time for the arms. I shape 2 clay sausages that I cut halfway through, getting them ready to clamp on the arms after I've cut and bent the wire as I wanted. Now to help this emotion along, I am going to give our little friend a flower that he's holding. So that is what I'm going to work on after the arms are in place. For the stem of the flower, I am cutting and bending a little piece of wire that I am pressing and smoothing some clay on afterwards. When I am satisfied with the stem, I move on to the leaves that I'm just shaping out with my fingers, simply because it doesn't have to be any sort of cohesiveness to the leaves, you can say. When they are as I want them, all I have to do is give them some texture with my rubber shaper tool before I smooth them on too. With the whole stalk of the flower done, I place it in the oven and baked it just as I baked the teeth in the start of the video. With that in the oven, let's make a flower. Now for the leaves of the flower, we are taking a circle of clay and cut into it like you see me doing here. Now don't do exactly like I'm doing here, because that's just stupid cutting into your fingers. Place it on the table and be smart, guys. With the crown of the flower cut as we wanted, all we have to do is shape out the leaves with our fingers. Now this can be a tricky process, but just keep trying and keep going. I've made my share of flowers, so this wasn't a problem for me. But when I started making flowers, oh my god, it was hard. Oh, so many retries. Now, with the crown of the flower done, we are working at the bottom of the flower, blending that in so we have something to hold on to when we texture the leaves, using our round rubber shaper tool. Now I'm going for a very cartoony fantasy flower. If you want a more realistic flower, then reference photos is always advised. Now for the middle part of the flower, where we just pressing in a little ball of clay before we give it some texture, poking it in with our dentist tool. And that is basically it for the flower. All we have to do now is shape it out so it matches Little Sadi's mood, making the leaves droopy and the head hanging low. As a final detail, I take my dentist tool yet again and trace where the leaves are, making it more three-dimensional. But with that, it's off to the oven. And while it yet again bakes, let's start on the hands, where we're using the ball trick again to get the hands pretty much the same size. I shape the half balls slightly elongated before I cut out 3 fingers that I carefully pull and round, afterwards making this perfect cartoony hand. But since he's going to hold the flower, he's also going to need a thumb. So I take a small snake of clay that I press in along the side, slightly tilted, before I blend that in very much at the top of the hand and not as much at the bottom of the hand, leaving the impression that there is a thumb muscle, so to speak. But with the hand shaped as I want it to be, all we have to do is smooth it in before we yet again start giving the arms some texture. But I am going to spare you most of that process. Instead, let me tell you about the butterfly I decided to give him. Pretty much like with the ears, I cut it into shape using a sheet of clay, like so. First cutting a square, before I started cutting 2 triangles into the square, making this butterfly shape. With the shape as I wanted it, all I had to do was round it with my fingers, before I took the round rubber shaper tool and gave it some folds. With that done, I took a band of clay that I traced all around the middle, making the knot of the butterfly. Now I wasn't worried about the actual band that should go around the neck, simply because Sadie has long hair, so it would be hidden underneath all that fur. So with the bow done, all I had to do was secure it with some bacon bond. So now Sadie is as dressed up as he's going to be. Now I told you I wasn't going to talk too much about texturing the arms, but there is a vital detail that I forgot. I am pressing in the nails using whichever round cylinder I found this time, and are completing Sadie's texture on the arms way before I start working on the shoulders, and that is simply for me to have a place to hold on to while I work with the arms. After that, all I have to do is place the little flower in the hand and squeeze his little fingers around it, so it looks natural. Now here you can really see the difference between textured fur and untextured fur. So while we're at it, why don't we give his last arm some texture and build up the shoulders. And with his fur done, it is pretty much off to the oven for one last bake. Which means this is pretty much it for this Tutootsie. Even though he isn't completely done, Paintfect still needs to put some paint on him. Her video is going to be the last of this series, but that doesn't mean that we aren't going to cheat and see the sad little fluff ball. And there he is. Poor little Sadi. Please don't get sad when you look at him. This one is Mr. Clayfect's favorite, so of course it has a special place in my heart. Speaking of a special place, if you like my videos and like what I do, why not hit that like button, leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. It will mean a lot to me and will put you right back here in the Clay family. Ooh, please tell me in the comments below which Tutootsie you like the best. And would you ever consider making a Tutootsie? If you do, then leave a hashtag because I would love to see it. But at last guys, it is time for me to sign off. Thank you so much for watching. It really means the world to me. I hope to see you next time. But if you can wait until next time, why not click on the square to your light? Then you're going to see another little Tutootsie get made. But until then guys, bye!